Enterprise deployment boundaries. We're looking at ITIL service transition and a sub-process of release and deployment. We're looking at enterprise deployment and where it fits. The enterprise deployment process manages deployments of technology updates to optimize use of both human and capital resources. The first boundary to understand is, where does enterprise deployment fit? Enterprise deployment moves technology updates from development to production. An enterprise deployment starts with a deployment package, which contains the components to be deployed, split into standalone units called deployment units. An enterprise deployment ends after deploying. Now that may go through multiple environments between development and production. With each stage, testing is done, verifying that the deployment units, remember those are standalone collections of capabilities, making sure each of them are successful. No development is done during the deployment, and not all deployment units pass. So how's it done? Project management, or if you have an enterprise resource management group, those types of groups would start an enterprise deployment. Once they map out who can have access to which environments during which time. That means they're also engaging with an environment management process and team, as well as data management to make sure that the proper data is in each environment when it's needed. So let's look at the life of an enterprise deployment. It starts off its life in draft, where we're collecting the components into deployment units, making sure that they're standalone and well documented so we know how we'll deploy them at each step of the way. Then developers start working in their development and development test environments. And once development is truly done, the development code is completed and it's promoted through an enterprise deployment into say a testing environment, where each of the deployment units is validated to make sure that it tests completely and can pass on to the next deployment in the next environment, which could be a staging environment or a pre-production environment. After that, the enterprise deployment after being validated in the staging environment, the enterprise deployment is deployed into production, and the life goes into a state of review, where we go back and look at how the deployment went and what we learned. After the review, the deployment is closed. So what's the structure of an enterprise deployment? As we talked about, a deployment contains one or more deployment units. Each unit can stand on its own. So if a deployment unit testing finds a failure, it can be deactivated, not used in the next move into the next environment. So there can't be cross dependencies between deployment units. A deployment also can have relationships to multiple environments. It really depends how you manage your environments. If there's just one of each, you probably don't need this relationship. But if there's a multiplicity of each of your pre-production environments, you'll need some way to capture which configuration items are mapped from production into those environments. A deployment will also have a relationship to multiple change requests. Every move, once development and development test is done, requires a change to move into a change-controlled pre-production environment. So remember, an enterprise deployment manages deployments of technology updates to optimize the use of both human and capital resources. It sits between development and production.